on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. America First with Sebastian Gorka, today at 3, right before Sean Thompson at 4 on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Really, it's only been a couple of weeks since the big guy, Mr. 10%, President Biden, his administration announced their big plans to cool off the planet because we're in this period of global boiling. Remember, the UN Secretary General told us that. Here was that announcement.
No, not while my greatest nemesis still provides our customers with free light, heat, and energy. I call this enemy the sun. Since the beginning of time, man has yearned to destroy the sun. I will do the next best thing. Block it out.
Good God.
Imagine it, Smithers. Electrical lights and heaters running all day long.
But, sir, every plant and tree will die. Owls will deafen us with incessant hooting. The town sundial will be useless. I don't want any part of this project. It's unconscionably fiendish.
I will not suffer your insubordination.
When did Smithers go to work for the big guy? They call it solar radiation modification, not a cartoon, although it's cartoonish. The report noted several ways authorities could look to achieve solar radiation modification, all of which do admittedly come with potentially devastating consequences if they're wrong. The task of blocking out the sun could have severe ramifications for weather patterns and food supplies, which would in turn impact biodiversity, geopolitics, and health. But you know how good the government is at huge gambits like this, particularly in the name of threats that are wildly exaggerated. This is part of the war on life's simple pleasures, including sunlight, that Amber Athey wrote about recently. She joins us now, Washington editor for the Spectator, host of the Unfit to Print podcast, and author of The Snowflakes Revolt: How Woke Millennials Hijacked American Media. Amber, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So we are kindred spirits in at least one sense. This piece that you wrote about life's simple pleasures, water pressure. My shower needs to hit me like the fire hose hit Andy Dufresne in Shawshank. That's what I demand, and you agree.
Absolutely. I think that the shower should feel like it's sloughing your skin off or it's not doing its job, right? And unfortunately, we've seen attempts to regulate shower water pressure over the past decade or so. They started mostly under the Obama administration. And Trump actually pulled the regulations back. He said that he was going to get rid of this rule that basically made sure that companies who manufacture shower heads, the only way that they could produce a semi-quality shower while abiding by the water pressure regulations was to put a bunch of holes in the head. And as we know, that actually just reduces the pressure even more because you have water dispersing through multiple exit points. And Trump said, no, we're going to have good showers in America. But the Biden administration reversed it along with a bunch of other policies in the name of being eco-friendly. And it's so foolhardy, I think, these plans to regulate people's appliances and the amount of water that they use, because apparently what the Biden administration doesn't realize is that if your appliances don't work the first time or they don't work efficiently, you're basically just using more energy and water in the time that it takes you to actually get your things clean.
Right, and so now this has spread, as it always does, this government creep, pun intended, to stoves and dishwashers
and light bulbs.
Well, light bulbs, yeah. Obviously, we've won the war on incandescent light bulbs. That's a celebration. The whole sort of your existence in your in your private spaces is going to be is well. It's substantially, if not completely, regulated by the federal government. Or at least that's the idea.
Exactly. And I remember earlier this year, everyone was talking about the potential for a gas stove ban, and the Biden administration insisted repeatedly that it wasn't happening. But then we saw it happen in California and in New York, where they did attempt to take away gas stoves. And everyone who cooks knows that gas stoves are superior, right? Your food gets heated more evenly. Your food doesn't slide around in your pan because it's actually on an even surface. All professional cooks prefer gas stoves over electric and other cooktops. And the Democrats just don't care. They really don't. They want to take away these little things that improve people's lives, in some cases substantially, in some cases just a little bit. But for a lot of people, that matters, right? Having a good dishwasher matters to a lot of people. If you're a woman who stays at home and takes care of her family and you're doing tons of dishes on the daily, it matters to you that you have a good dishwasher that has the water pressure capable of actually getting your dishes cleaned on the first try. It matters to you that your toilet only takes one flush to get your waste down into the pipes, and avoids clogging constantly, or plumbers coming in to have to fix your toilet because it doesn't have enough pressure to get the stuff going down. These things are important to people, and I don't fault anybody for these things being important to them, just like shower water pressure is important to us. And I think it's such an elitist attitude for the people in power to pretend like these are no big deal. And to them it's not, because naturally I doubt that any of them will have to go without any of the best because they can afford it.
I mean, Nancy Pelosi has two, restaurant grade freezers in her house in San Francisco.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, she's got to have a space for chocolate bars.
Right, but is there any proof that if you go from a gas stove to an electric stove, that's going to do anything? Or is this just feel-good ideas?
I think it's just feel-good ideas. I mean, the studies on the gas stove incident, for example, are all funded by electric and clean energy groups. And clean energy is kind of a misnomer anyway, because as we know, in the case of electric vehicles, the mining for the cobalt and other minerals that's required to make those batteries ends up producing way more waste than just having a gas car. But they say that gas stoves are going to cause asthma in children. And when you look at the studies, it's clear that they have extrapolated a whole bunch of data in a way that doesn't really make sense. It's obvious that they have refused to look at data that could possibly refute their assertions, because they're approaching these studies with a certain goal, which is to increase the likelihood that the government will give subsidies and contracts to these so-called clean energy groups over traditional companies that make appliances that require fossil fuels. And there's really no evidence that these minor changes would really affect the environment anyway. There's a recent testimony of an individual from the U.S. Department of Energy who is trying to push a lot of these climate proposals. And when asked what the government would actually do with the proposed $50 trillion that the climate groups want to use to reduce temperatures, he said they had no idea, and that they couldn't even tell you how much that $50 trillion was actually going to reduce the human footprint on the environment.
Well,
so I think these policies are ridiculous. They don't really understand what they're doing. And I really think it's just a control mechanism to get Americans to be a little bit more miserable and a little bit more compliant.
Well, I mean, it's going to cost a lot of money to build that Mr. Burns-like contraption to block out the sun. So,
Right.
you got to factor that in. And by the way, on the water pressure thing, and just the whole shower experience, I hope they don't go after delousing powder, because I want to be hit like the fire hose hit Dufresne, and then I also delouse after my shower as well, like that. So I need powder, thrown at me. All right. So before we let you go, what can we do as a society to make Megan Rapinoe feel more loved, celebrated, appreciated?
Dan really loves soccer, and he loves Megan.
Well, I feel like
Really.
she's not getting. I mean, especially according to her, the sort of recognition and celebration she deserves.
Yeah, she really is insistent that she's a victim and that somehow the entire world is against her. And I have this piece that I wrote in the Spectator recently about how she wants to be the last female sports star because she has somewhat single-handedly sabotaged a lot of people's goodwill towards the U.S. women's national team. And the U.S. has a very unique phenomenon where their women's team is far more popular than their men's team. That's not the case globally. And yet Megan Rapinoe constantly complains about the lack of attention that they receive. It's truly mind-blowing. Of course, she was involved in that equal pay fight, which turned out to be bogus because the women themselves had actually negotiated a different contract from the men's team and then complained about the outcome of it, which, to be honest, is a very womanly thing to do.
Nice.
And then she also believes that biological men should be able to play in women's sports, and of course she never had to deal with that, which
right, because she says that on the way
make
out.
her position moot because she wouldn't be as talented, and so she wants to pull the ladder up behind her and make sure other women don't get the same opportunities that she did.
But she's such a great success story. I mean, I read your article and I loved it. I didn't know she was inspired to play soccer by her older brother, who then suffered from a heroin addiction.
Yes, and her twin sister, they played soccer together for a really long time. And her twin sister suffered from quite a few injuries and actually ended up having an opioid addiction herself. She's in recovery now, but I don't know how you go through your life and see the tragedies befalling your family members and not be extraordinarily grateful for the position that you were given.
She is Amber Athey, Washington editor for The Spectator, host of the Unfit to Print podcast, and author of the book, The Snowflakes Revolt, How Woke Millennials Hijacked American Media. Amber, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
From Hall of Fame artists to rising stars, the Illinois Lottery Grandstand stage will be rocking at this year's Illinois State Fair. Rock and Roll Hall of Famers, the Doobie Brothers, on Saturday night, August 12th. 7-time Grammy Award winner Alanis Morissette with special guest Tennille Towns on Sunday night, August 13th. Illinois native REO Speedwagon returns to the State Fair with special guest Edwin McCain on Tuesday night, August 15th. Hard Rock and Alter Bridge with special guest Mammoth WVH on Wednesday night, August 16th. And rounding out the rock will be Illinois-rooted rocker Chevelle on Friday night, August 18th, with special guests to be announced. Tickets on sale now, 24/7.